Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The desert heat wrapped around Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer like a vice as he peered through his scope. At 34, he had the weathered face of a man who had seen too much. His Ranger tab wasn't just a patch on his uniform, it was etched into every calculated decision he made. Target building, 200 meters northeast, Cole whispered, his voice rough from the fine dust that seemed to coat everything in Kandahar. Movement in the second-floor window. Lieutenant Alejandra Vega nodded. Her dark eyes narrowed as she consulted the satellite imagery on her tablet. Confirmed. Intelligence suggests minimal civilian presence. Since when has intelligence ever been right? Muttered Specialist Kindercarmen from Cole's left. The medic checked his kit for the third time, a nervous habit that belied his casual sarcasm. Cole didn't respond. 6 years in special operations had taught him to filter out unnecessary chatter. His focus remained absolute, his breathing controlled despite the 110-degree heat pressing down on them. They had been tracking this high-value target for weeks, and Cole wasn't about to let him slip away. "Kenny, I need you to maintain position behind that wall. Vega, circle east to create a crossfire situation if this goes sideways," Cole ordered, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "On it, Sarge," Kenny replied, slinging his medical bag over his shoulder. The weight of combat gauze, tourniquets, and battlefield medication was a familiar burden. "Try not to get shot. Paperwork's a bitch." Vega moved silently away, her compact frame disappearing between the mud brick buildings. Cole had worked with her on 3 separate deployments. She never questioned his judgment in the field, a trust forged through firefights and split-second decisions that had kept them all alive as dusk settled over the compound. Cole felt the familiar calm wash over him. Combat clarity, his father had called it. The world reduced to angles, distances, and threat assessments. Nothing else existed during these moments, not the politics, not the questioning of why they were still fighting this seemingly endless war. All elements in position. Vega's voice crackled through the comm. "Ready on your go." Cole took one final sweep of the compound through his scope. "Execute in 3, 2, 1. The next 17 minutes unfolded with practiced precision. Cole breached the main entrance with controlled explosives. Kenny provided cover fire as 3 insurgents emerged from side door. Vega eliminated a sniper on the rooftop before he could get shot off. The operation was textbook until it wasn't. "Contact, rear," Kenny shouted over the comms as a burst of automatic fire erupted from behind their position. Cole pivoted instantly, his muscle memory taking over before conscious thought could form. 2 figures had emerged from what they believed was an abandoned structure. Cole dropped the first with a double tap to the chest. The second managed to get off a burst of fire before Vega's shot silenced him permanently. "Kenny, status?" Cole demanded, already moving toward the medic's position, that a string of colorful curses answered him. "Graze my arm. Nothing vital. Confirmed HVT location." Cole asked, switching focus back to the mission. "Second floor, eastern room," Vega replied, moving to secure. 30 minutes later, the target was zip-tied and hooded in the back of their vehicle. Kenny had a field dressing on his arm, and Cole was already drafting the mission report in his head as they navigated back to base. "Good call on the rear approach," Vega said quietly as the convoy rumbled through the darkened streets. "Most would have missed that possible angle." Cole nodded, but said nothing. He didn't mention how he'd spotted a discarded cigarette, but near the supposedly abandoned building too fresh to have been there long. Details mattered. Details kept you alive. Back at the forward operating base, Cole completed his post-mission routine with military precision. Weapon cleaned and checked. Gear inspected for damage. Report filed with exact timestamps and coordinates. Only then did he allow himself the luxury of checking his personal email. He had one unread message from Marley. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first genuine expression to crack his stoic facade since the mission began. 6 years of marriage, and still her messages were the anchors that kept him grounded in this floating world of violence and dust. Cole had met Marley Davidson during a rare leave in Denver. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a sports equipment company, and her laughter had cut through the dull roar of the crowded bar like a beam of light. Marley didn't understand military life. Few civilians truly did, but she made the effort. She sent care packages with his favorite beef jerky. She organized video calls despite the 13-hour time difference. She maintained their modest home in Boise with the same attention to detail that Cole applied to his mission planning. "Got a letter from the missus?" Kenny asked, dropping onto the cot across from Cole. His wound had been properly cleaned and bandaged at the medical tent, but the medic still favored his right arm slightly. "Email," Cole corrected, clicking open the message. "Probably telling me about the new fence she's putting in the backyard." Kenny chuckled. "Domestic bliss awaits, my friend. Meanwhile, I'll be drinking away my divorce settlement in whatever dive bar will have me once this tour ends." Cole knew about Kenny's ex-wife. Everyone in the unit did. 3 years ago, she'd left him for his former best friend while Kenny was deployed. The medic covered his pain with a veneer of biting humor, but Cole had seen how the betrayal had hollowed him out. "Your problem was marrying a woman who wanted a husband, not a soldier," Cole replied, eyes still on his screen as the email loaded on the painfully slow connection. "And yours doesn't." Kenny raised an eyebrow. Marley knew what she was signing up for, Cole said with quiet confidence. "She understands the life." The email finally loaded, and Cole's world collapsed. Cole read the message 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. "Cole, I filed for divorce. By the time you read this, I will have moved out and transferred our joint savings to my personal account. I need a fresh start, and Chase has offered me one." "Yes, Chase Ellison from next door. We've been seeing each other for some time now that I've already packed my things. I'm sorry it had to end this way, but I couldn't wait another 6 months for a conversation we both know wouldn't change anything. The papers will be waiting when you get back. Don't call my parents, they already know. Good luck." Marley, the message was so clinical it might have been addressed to a stranger. No mention of their 6 years together. No acknowledgement of what they'd built. Just the cold facts and a dismissive good luck that made his stomach turn. Cole stared at the screen, his face betraying nothing even as his mind raced through the implications. Chase Ellison, the neighbor who had moved in 2 years ago. The same neighbor who had offered to keep an eye on things whenever Cole deployed. The neighbor who Cole had invited to their backyard barbecues during his last leave. "Bad news?" Kenny asked, noticing Cole's prolonged silence. Cole closed the laptop with a controlled motion. "Marley's leaving. Filed for divorce." The words felt foreign in his mouth, as if he were reporting intel about someone else's life. Kenny's face darkened. "Shit, man. I'm sorry." He paused, then asked someone else. "Neighbor." Cole's voice was flat, each syllable measured. Kenny's expression shifted from sympathy to something harder. He recognized the pattern all too well. "The system's rigged against us, brother. She'll take half your shit while you're over here getting shot at." Cole stood abruptly, his movements precise despite the emotional grenade that had just detonated in his chest. "I need to make some calls." "Cole," Kenny called after him, "don't do anything stupid." Without turning around, Cole replied, "Have you ever known me to be stupid, Kenny?" In the privacy of the communications tent, Cole reopened the email. He read it one last time, analyzing it as he would enemy correspondence. There was something in the tone, a hint of defensiveness, perhaps guilt. Marley expected him to fall apart, to beg, to react emotionally. It's why she'd included that final dismissive good luck. She was preparing for his breakdown. Cole's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could write paragraphs, ask why, demand explanations, threaten, plead. But none of that would accomplish anything tactical. Instead, he typed a single word, understood. He hit send, then immediately opened a new email to his personal attorney back in the States as he outlined precise instructions for what needed to happen next. Memories flooded through him. Not the happy ones. He methodically cataloged every warning sign he'd missed 0.8 months ago. During his last leave, Marley had seemed distant. Cole had attributed it to the adjustment period that always followed his returns. Military marriages existed in cycles: the awkward reunion, the brief honeymoon period, the growing comfort, and then the pain of separation again. He'd assumed they were still in the adjustment phase. "You've changed," she'd said one night as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, the television playing a show neither was watching. "Everyone changes," he'd replied, not understanding the accusation in her tone. "Not like this. You're harder." She'd wrapped her arms around herself. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living with a stranger." Cole had reached for her hand then, trying to bridge the growing gap between them. The deployment was rough. "Give me time." She'd squeezed his fingers but didn't move closer. "We never talk about money anymore," she'd said, changing the subject abruptly. "What's there to talk about? My pay goes into our account. You handle the bills. It's working, isn't it?" "I think we should discuss our finances more openly," she'd insisted. "I'm thinking about some investments." Cole had nodded, distracted by an analysis of enemy movement patterns he'd been constructing mentally. "Whatever you think is best. I trust you." The conversation had ended there, and Cole now recognized it as the first probe Marley testing how much financial autonomy she could secure without raising alarms. 3 months before that, Chase Ellison had moved into the house next door. Younger than Cole by several years, Chase worked in real estate development, or so he claimed. He drove an ostentatious sports car and had a habit of hosting parties that lasted until dawn. "He seems like a decent guy," Cole had remarked after helping Chase move in a heavy dining room table. "Very friendly," Marley had agreed, her eyes lingering a moment too long as Chase removed his shirt in the summer heat to continue unloading his moving truck. Cole had missed the significance then. Now, reviewing the memory with cold clarity, he recognized the appreciation in her gaze. 2 weeks into his current deployment, Marley's video calls had become less frequent. "Work is crazy," she'd explained. "The new product launch has me running everywhere." Cole had accepted this without question. He understood demanding work schedules and the difficulty of maintaining regular communication across time zones and security protocols. Then there were the financial anomalies. Cole hadn't paid much attention to their account details, a mistake he now acknowledged. The monthly mortgage payment had increased slightly, but Marley had explained it away as an adjustment to their escrow. Small withdrawals had appeared with greater frequency, labeled only as miscellaneous expenses. All these pieces now formed a coherent picture. Like puzzle pieces dumped before him, Cole arranged them into their proper places and saw the complete image with brutal clarity. While he'd been planning missions and keeping his team alive, Marley had been planning her exit. While he'd been writing her letters about their future, she'd been draining their accounts. While he looked forward to building a family upon his return, she'd been building a new life with Chase. Cole sat in the dim light of the communications tent, his face illuminated by the computer screen as he sent a series of precisely worded emails. To his attorney, to his bank, to his commanding officer, requesting emergency leave not to save his marriage, but to salvage what remained of his life. Lieutenant Vega found him there an hour later, still typing. "Heard about what happened," she said, leaning against the tent pole. "That's rough." Cole didn't look up. News travels fast. "It's a small base." Vega paused. "Kenny's worried about you. Kenny should worry about his own problems." Vega stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What's your plan, Cole?" Cole finally looked up, his eyes clear and focused. "What makes you think I have a plan?" A small smile touched Vega's lips. "Because I've never seen you without one. Even when the mission goes to hell, you've got 3 backup strategies ready to deploy." Cole closed the laptop. "I'm taking emergency leave. 10 days. To try to work things out." There was skepticism in Vega's tone. "To ensure I don't lose everything I've worked for." Cole stood, tucking the laptop under his arm. "She's moved in with the neighbor. Emptied our accounts. There's nothing to work out." Vega nodded slowly. "You know I've got your back, right? Whatever you need." Cole considered this. Lieutenant Alejandra Vega had climbed the ranks through merit and grit. She understood the value of discipline and had never let emotions cloud her judgment, a quality Cole respected above almost all others. "I appreciate that," he said simply as he walked back to his quarters. Cole felt a strange calm settling over him. The initial shock had given way to something familiar, the cool, detached analysis he applied to combat situations. Marley had declared war, and now he would respond in kind. Not with violence or emotionally charged outbursts, but with strategy, precision. The same methodical approach that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours would now guide him through the battlefield of divorce. Kenny was waiting outside their shared quarters, smoking a cigarette despite regulations against it. He extinguished it quickly as Cole approached. "Emergency leave approved?" he asked. Cole nodded. "Wheels up tomorrow morning. You want company? I've got some leave saved up." "Been there, done that. Got the alimony payments to prove it. I need to handle this alone," Cole replied. Kenny frowned. "Look, when Katie left me, I went off the rails. Drank myself stupid, called her 50 times a day, showed up at her apartment. Made everything worse. I'm not you," Cole said simply. "No shit. You're worse. You bottle everything up until you explode. I've seen it happen in firefights." Cole fixed Kenny with a level stare. "This isn't a firefight. It's exactly a firefight. She's got your money, your house, and fucking Chase Ellison. She's got all the advantages, and she struck first." "That's her mistake," Cole replied, entering their quarters to pack his gear. "She thinks this is over. It's just beginning." As Cole methodically folded his civilian clothes into his duffel bag, he mentally mapped out the days ahead. Marley had always complained that he approached everything like a military operation. She'd never understood that this mentality wasn't something he could switch on and off. It was who he was, the framework through which he processed the world. Now, that same disciplined approach would be his salvation. Where others might be paralyzed by betrayal, Cole found clarity in planning his counteroffensive. He slept dreamlessly that night, and in the morning boarded a transport plane with the same composed demeanor he'd maintained since reading Marley's email. As the aircraft lifted off from the dusty airfield, Cole stared out the small window at the Afghan mountains receding below. In his pocket was a printed copy of Marley's email and his one-word response. A reminder of the mission ahead. Understood. The layover in Germany gave Cole 6 hours to execute the first phase of his plan. Seated in a corner of the USO lounge at Ramstein Air Base, he connected to the secure Wi-Fi and began making calls. "Mr. Hathaway, this is Cole Mercer," he said when his attorney answered. "I need to discuss the inheritance from my grandfather." Theodore Hathaway had handled Cole's legal affairs since he'd enlisted. The lawyer specialized in military matters and had helped Cole establish a will and power of attorney before his first deployment. "Cole, good to hear from you. I was sorry to receive your email about the situation with Marley. How are you holding up?" "I'm operational," Cole replied. "What's the status of my grandfather's property in Montana?" There was a brief pause on the line, then Hathaway cleared his throat. "The land is still in trust, as per your instructions. 5 acres with the old cabin. Remote, minimal value beyond the sentimental." "What are you thinking?" "I want to transfer to a new trust, one that Marley can't touch." "That's doable. The inheritance predates your marriage, and you've never commingled those assets with joint funds." "But Cole, regarding your other assets, our joint account is already empty," Cole interrupted. "She's taken everything except my military pension and my separate account." "Which contains how much?" "Enough." Cole had always maintained a separate account with a portion of his combat pay and bonuses. Marley had known about it, but not the exact amount. It was his contingency fund, another military habit she'd found paranoid. Hathaway sighed audibly. "We need to talk jurisdiction. You're legal residents of Idaho, but with your military status and her recent actions, we might have options. If you file first." "I want to file in Montana," Cole cut in. "My official residence has always been my grandfather's property for military purposes." "That could work in your favor. Idaho is a community property state. Montana uses equitable distribution, which gives judges more discretion. Considering the circumstances of her infidelity and financial actions, a Montana judge might be sympathetic." "Then that's our play. I also need you to contact the Military Benefits Office. I want her removed from everything healthcare, death benefits, survivor entitlements. All of it." "Cole," Hathaway's voice softened. "Have you considered trying to work things out? Sometimes in the heat of—" "She's living with another man, Ted," Cole stated flatly. "She emptied our accounts while I was deployed in a combat zone. There's nothing to work out." The line went quiet for a moment. "I understand. I'll handle the divorce filing in Montana and get working on the benefits immediately. What about the house in Boise? Who's on the deed? You're the sole owner. You purchased it before the marriage, though she may still have claims against it given the length of your marriage and her contributions to the mortgage. Cole nodded to himself. Another advantage. Send an eviction notice. 30 days. That's aggressive, Hathaway cautioned. Courts don't usually look favorably on forcing a spouse out during divorce proceedings. She's not living there anyway. She's with Chase. The eviction is just to establish that I'm exercising my property rights. And Ted, I want the filing to specifically cite adultery. Idaho and Montana are no-fault states, Cole. Adultery doesn't carry the legal weight it once did. I don't care. I want it in the record. Cole's voice remained even, but there was steel beneath the words. Very well. I'll draw up the paperwork immediately. Where can I reach you? I'll be in Boise tomorrow. After that, Montana. After ending the call, Cole immediately dialed his bank. Using his security credentials, he confirmed that Marley had indeed transferred $41,870, their entire joint savings, to her personal account 3 days ago. The bank representative expressed concern, but admitted there was little they could do since she had legal access to the account. Cole closed the joint account permanently, then transferred his inheritance money from his grandfather into a new account at a different bank, one Marley had no connection to. Next, he called Master Sergeant Phillips at the base family services office. Phillips, this is Staff Sergeant Mercer. I need to make changes to my benefits package. Emergency situation. Phillips was familiar with these calls. Deployed soldiers discovering infidelity was, unfortunately, not uncommon. I'm sorry to hear that, Sergeant. What changes are we making? Remove Marley Mercer from all benefits. Healthcare, insurance, death benefits, everything. Effective immediately. Understood. I'll need you to sign forms when you return to base, but I can start the process now. Do you have someone else you want to designate as beneficiary? Cole considered briefly. My sister, Emma Mercer, Boston, Massachusetts. I'll provide her details when I sign the paperwork. By the time Cole boarded his connecting flight to the States, he had dismantled every financial connection between himself and Marley. His inheritance was secured. Divorce papers were being filed in Montana. The eviction notice would be delivered to their Boise residence within days. Her military benefits were terminated, all without a single emotional outburst, all without revealing his strategy to Marley herself. As the plane crossed the Atlantic, Cole allowed himself one small satisfaction. She would never see this coming. Marley had always underestimated him, treating his methodical nature as a character flaw rather than a strength. She'd expected him to fall apart, to beg, to plead, to lose control. That had been her first tactical error. There would be no desperate calls, no emotional confrontations, no begging for explanations. Only the cold precision of a counterattack she never anticipated. Marley Mercer, soon to revert to Marley Davidson, stretched luxuriously in Chase Ellison's king-size bed. The Egyptian cotton sheets felt impossibly soft against her skin, a far cry from the utilitarian bedding Cole had insisted was perfectly functional. Coffee's ready, babe, Chase called from the kitchen of his downtown Boise condo. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered sweeping views of the city skyline and the mountains beyond, another luxury that Cole would have dismissed as impractical and overpriced. Marley wrapped herself in Chase's silk robe and padded barefoot to the kitchen. At 31, she still turned heads, a fact Chase had been quick to appreciate in ways Cole never had. Where Cole saw the world in terms of objectives and threat assessments, Chase saw possibilities and pleasures. I talked to my lawyer yesterday, she said, accepting the mug of perfectly prepared coffee. He says the divorce should be straightforward since Cole's deployed. Courts usually expedite military divorces. Chase leaned against the marble countertop, his unbuttoned shirt revealing the tan he maintained through regular sessions at an exclusive tanning salon. And the house. Assets. Idaho's a community property state, Marley replied with confidence. Everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50. Plus, I've made most of the mortgage payments while he's been deployed, so I might even have a stronger claim. What about his military pension? That's worth fighting for. Marley sipped her coffee. My lawyer says I can get a portion based on the length of the marriage. 6 years means I'm entitled to a significant percentage. Chase grinned. See, I told you this would work out. Cole's halfway around the world, and by the time he gets back, everything will be settled. He replied to my email, Marley mentioned, trying to sound casual. Chase's eyebrows shot up. Really? What did the robot have to say? Just one word. Understood. That's it. Typical Cole. Chase laughed. The man has the emotional range of a desk lamp. No begging? No, baby, please come back? Marley shook her head, feeling a twinge of something not quite guilt, but perhaps disappointment. Nothing. Just understood. Well, what did you expect? The guy treats marriage like a mission briefing. I still don't know what you saw in him. Stability, Marley admitted. And he was different before. The deployments changed him. She didn't mention how Cole's quiet confidence had once made her feel secure, or how his unwavering commitment had been the foundation of their relationship until it began to feel like a prison rather than a sanctuary. Chase wrapped his arms around her waist. Well, you've got stability now and a hell of a lot more fun to go with it. Her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen displayed her sister's name, Kinley. Hey, Kin, Marley answered, pulling away from Chase. Have you lost your damn mind? Kinley's voice was sharp enough that Marley had to hold the phone away from her ear. I see Mom's called you, Marley replied, moving to the living room for privacy. Of course she called me. You empty your accounts, move in with a neighbor, and email your husband in a war zone that you want a divorce. What the hell, Marley? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I've seen your Instagram posts with Chase. You two weren't even trying to be discreet. Marley felt heat rising in her cheeks. Cole and I have been over for a long time. He just hasn't realized it yet. So you steal his money while he's getting shot at? Real classy, Marley. It's our money, Marley insisted. I'm entitled to it. Kinley's laugh was bitter. You think Cole's gonna lie down for this? The guy who plans everything 6 ways from Sunday? You really believe he doesn't have contingencies for something like this? What's he going to do from Afghanistan? Marley challenged. By the time he gets back, the divorce will be almost finalized. You're delusional. Cole Mercer isn't your average heartbroken husband, Marley. The man calculates risk and response before he gets out of bed in the morning. Kinley paused. And what about the ethical implications? The man is serving his country. Don't start with the patriotic guilt trip, Marley snapped. You have no idea what it's like being married to someone who treats emotions like a liability. And Chase is better? The guy who hits on married women and drives a car he can't afford. Marley glanced toward the kitchen, where Chase was scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the conversation. Chase understands me. We want the same things. Yeah, Cole's money. Kinley sighed. Look, I love you, but you've made a serious miscalculation. Cole's not going to just say understood and walk away. That's not who he is. After ending the call, Marley rejoined Chase in the kitchen, her sister's warning echoing uncomfortably in her mind. Everything okay? Chase asked, not looking up from his phone. Fine. Just my sister being dramatic. Marley hesitated, then asked, do you think Cole will fight the divorce? Chase finally looked up, his expression dismissive. What's he going to fight with? You've got the upper hand in every way. He's thousands of miles away, you've secured the assets, and you've got a great lawyer. He kissed her forehead. Stop worrying. In a few months, this will all be behind us. Marley nodded, but a seed of doubt had been planted. She knew Cole better than Chase did. In 6 years of marriage, she'd never once seen Cole accept defeat in anything. The next morning, Marley met with her attorney, Gregory Walsh, in his downtown office. Walsh had come highly recommended by one of Chase's business associates, expensive but effective, especially in high-conflict divorces. So, Walsh began, settling behind his imposing desk. You've initiated divorce proceedings against your husband, who is currently deployed with the Army Rangers in Afghanistan. And you've transferred jointly held assets to your personal account. He reviewed his notes. Approximately $42,000. That's right, Marley confirmed. It's our joint savings. I've been making deposits into that account for years. Walsh removed his glasses. Mrs. Mercer, Ms. Davidson, please. I'm going back to my maiden name, Ms. Davidson then. While Idaho is a community property state, Judges take a dim view of one spouse emptying joint accounts, particularly when the other spouse is deployed military personnel. Marley shifted uncomfortably. My lawyer in Montana. Walsh held up a hand. Montana? Why would you have a lawyer in Montana? I don't. I misspoke. I met my friend in Montana who went through a divorce said. Ms. Davidson, is there some connection to Montana I should know about? Property? Residence? Family. Cole's grandfather had some land there. Cole inherited it before we were married. It's just an old cabin and some acreage. Practically worthless. Walsh made note. And has your husband responded to the divorce filing yet? No, but he replied to my email with just one word. Understood. The attorney's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. I see. And when do you expect him to return to the States? His deployment ends in 6 months, but Marley's phone buzzed with an incoming email. She glanced down, then froze. Ms. Davidson, Walsh prompted. It's from the county clerk's office, Marley said slowly, scanning the email. They're saying Cole has already filed for divorce. In Montana. 3 days ago. Walsh held out his hand. May I? Marley passed him the phone, watching as his expression darkened. Your husband has filed for divorce in Montana, citing irreconcilable differences in adultery. He's included evidence of your relationship with. Walsh paused, reading further. Chase Ellison. The filing includes bank statements showing the transfer of joint funds and requests immediate injunctive relief regarding the marital home in Boise. What does that mean? Marley asked, her mouth suddenly dry. It means, Ms. Davidson, that your husband has beaten you to the punch, and he's filed in a jurisdiction that may be more favorable to his position. Walsh continued reading. He's also provided documentation establishing Montana as his legal residence for military purposes. Can he do that? Apparently, he already has. Walsh returned the phone. This complicates matters significantly. We'll need to file a motion to dismiss the Montana proceedings and establish Idaho as the proper venue. Marley's phone buzzed again. Another email, this one from the Department of Defense, confirming the termination of her military spousal benefits, effective immediately. He's cut off my health care, she whispered, but Walsh's frown deepened. This suggests your husband is taking an aggressive posture. If he's already addressed the military benefits, I wouldn't be surprised if. The phone buzzed a third time. Marley almost didn't want to look. It's a notice to vacate the house, she said, her voice hollow. 30 days. Walsh extended his hand again, and Marley numbly passed over the phone. After reading the document, he sighed heavily. The house is solely in your husband's name. Marley nodded. He bought it before we were married. But I've been making the mortgage payments while he's deployed. That counts for something, right? It might, but it significantly weakens your position regarding ownership. Walsh leaned back. Ms. Davidson, I think we need to reassess our strategy. Your husband appears to be several steps ahead of us. He can't evict me. I'm his wife. You're his soon-to-be ex-wife who is already living with another man. Walsh corrected gently. And legally, if the property is solely in his name and was purchased before the marriage, his position is stronger than yours. Marley stared at the attorney, the full weight of her situation finally sinking in. What about the money I transferred? Given the circumstances, a judge will likely order you to return at least a portion of those funds. The timing transferring assets while your spouse is deployed and immediately filing for divorce doesn't look good. The sleek office suddenly felt suffocating. Marley had expected anger from Cole, perhaps desperate appeals to reconsider. She'd prepared for emotional confrontations and tense negotiations. She hadn't prepared for this cold, methodical dismantling of her position. No direct communication, no emotional appeals, just the inexorable machinery of legal proceedings set in motion with military precision. What do I do? She asked, hating the vulnerability in her voice. Walsh closed his portfolio. We fight back. But Ms. Davidson, I need to be clear this will be more complicated, more expensive, and less certain than you originally anticipated. As Marley left the attorney's office, her phone rang. Chase's name flashed on the screen. Hey, babe, how'd it go? He asked cheerfully. Marley stood on the sidewalk, pedestrians flowing around her like water around a stone. Not good. Cole filed first in Montana. He's trying to evict me from the house. He's cut off my military benefits. And my lawyer says I might have to return the money. There was a pause before Chase responded, his tone noticeably less enthusiastic. That's unexpected. Your lawyer can fight this, right? He says we can try, but Cole's position is stronger than we thought. The house is in his name, he's established legal residence in Montana, and she hesitated. Chase, this is going to get expensive. Another pause, longer this time. How expensive are we talking? Walsh charges $450 an hour, and he says this could drag on for months. Jesus, Marley. Chase's voice had lost all its warmth. I thought you said this would be straightforward. I thought it would be. How was I supposed to know Cole would file from Afghanistan? Maybe because that's exactly the kind of thing Cole would do. Chase snapped. The guy plans his breakfast with military precision. You didn't think he'd have a strategy for divorce? Marley felt a chill settle in her stomach. You're upset about the money. I'm upset that what you described as a simple split is turning into a financial black hole. I can't bankroll a lengthy legal battle, Marley. I thought we were in this together. Chase sighed audibly. We are, but I'm already carrying the mortgage on the condo, and business has been slow this quarter. There's a limit to what I can contribute. As the call ended, Marley stood motionless on the sidewalk, the bright Boise day suddenly dimmer. Her carefully constructed new beginning was already showing cracks in its foundation. Cole's single-word response echoed in her mind. Understood. She was beginning to understand. 2.3 days later, Marley sat in Walsh's office again, this time with Chase beside her. The attorney spread several documents across his desk. The Montana court has denied our motion to dismiss, Walsh explained. They've accepted jurisdiction based on your husband's established legal residence there for military purposes. That can't be right, Marley protested. We've lived in Boise for 4 years. Our home is here, the home that is solely in his name. Walsh reminded her gently. And technically, active-duty military personnel can maintain legal residence in a state where they don't physically live. Your husband has been paying Montana state taxes and has maintained his voter registration there. So what does this mean? Chase asked, his leg bouncing nervously beneath the desk. It means the divorce proceeds in Montana, under Montana law. Walsh picked up another document. Additionally, the court has issued a temporary injunction freezing the funds you transferred from the joint account. You're prohibited from spending that money until the court determines the appropriate distribution. Marley felt the blood drain from her face. But I need that money to live on. To pay you. Walsh nodded sympathetically. Understand. Unfortunately, the evidence your husband provided was compelling. Bank records showing the transfer occurring after he'd received deployment orders, combined with evidence of what? Chase prompted when Walsh hesitated. Evidence of your relationship predating Ms. Davidson's divorce filing. Walsh slid several printed photographs across the desk. These were included in your husband's filing. Marley stared at the images. Her and Chase embracing on his balcony, entering his building together, sharing an intimate dinner at an upscale restaurant. All dated weeks before she'd sent Cole the email. He had me followed, she whispered. More likely these came from social media, Walsh suggested. Your accounts or friends' accounts. The metadata shows most were taken from public Instagram posts. Chase cursed under his breath. Your friend Amber and her constant photos. The point is, Walsh continued, the adultery claim has substantial supporting evidence. While Montana is a no-fault state, judges still consider misconduct when determining asset distribution. Marley's hands trembled slightly. What about the house? Can he really evict me? I'm afraid the court has upheld the eviction notice. As the sole owner of the property, purchased before your marriage, your husband has the legal right to determine occupancy. Your contributions to the mortgage payments will be considered in the overall asset distribution, but they don't grant you ownership rights. This is insane, Chase interjected. She's being thrown out of her own home. Legally, it's not her home, Walsh corrected. And given that she's already established residence elsewhere with you, Mr. Ellison, the court didn't see the eviction as creating undue hardship. Marley felt as though the ground were shifting beneath her. Every assumption she'd made about Cole, about the divorce, about her future was being systematically demolished. "There's one more thing," Walsh said, lifting the final document. "The court has granted your husband's petition regarding military benefits. The determination cites the documented adultery as justification for immediate termination rather than the standard phase-out period." "Meaning what?" Marley asked. "Meaning you no longer have military health care coverage, commissary privileges, or any spousal benefits. And you won't be entitled to any portion of his military pension." Chase stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. He can't just erase 6 years of marriage." "He's not erasing the marriage, Mr. Ellison. He's responding to its breach." Walsh's tone remained professional, but carried an edge of reproach. "Ms. Davidson, I need to be honest with you. Our position has weakened considerably." "So what do we do?" Marley asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "We can continue fighting on multiple fronts, but that strategy is expensive and, frankly, unlikely to yield significant results given the current rulings. Alternatively, we could pursue a settlement." "A settlement?" Chase echoed incredulously. "After he's already taken everything?" Walsh turned his attention fully to Marley. "Your husband has outmaneuvered us at every turn. He filed in a favorable jurisdiction, established clear evidence of adultery, protected his assets, and secured the marital home. But he hasn't yet delivered the divorce decree. That suggests he might be open to negotiations on certain terms." Marley nodded slowly, trying to process the implications. "You think I should try to settle? I think you should consider what's most important to you at this point. Continuing this battle will be costly, both financially and emotionally, with diminishing returns." As they left the attorney's office, Marley felt numb. The bright future she'd envisioned with Chase was rapidly dimming, replaced by the harsh reality of legal defeats and dwindling resources. "We'll figure this out," Chase said as they walked to his car, but his voice lacked conviction. Marley didn't respond. For the first time since sending that email to Cole, she felt a flicker of doubt about her decision. Not because she wanted to return her marriage, that chapter was closed, but because she'd severely underestimated her husband. Cole had always approached their relationship with the same methodical focus he applied to everything else. It had frustrated her, made her feel like another item on his checklist rather than a partner. Now, that same calculated approach was dismantling the new life she'd tried to build. The eviction notice arrived at Chase's condo. The next day, a formal document requiring Marley to remove all personal belongings from the Boise house within 30 days. She'd already taken most of her clothes and personal items, but furniture, kitchen equipment, and various accumulated possessions remained. "I'll have to go pack everything up," she said, staring at the notice on Chase's kitchen counter. Chase frowned. "Can't you hire someone to do that? I've got the Henderson meeting that week, and I can't reschedule." "With what money? My accounts are frozen, remember?" Marley couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Right." Chase ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. "Look, I'm trying to be supportive here, but this situation is spiraling. We need to think practically." "Practically," Marley repeated, the word hollow in her mouth. "You mean about money?" "Among other things, yes. I care about you, Marley, but I didn't sign up for a financial nightmare." There was the first explicit acknowledgement that their relationship had conditions attached. Chase had been enamored with the idea of them together, with the excitement of forbidden romance. He hadn't prepared for the messy reality of divorce, legal battles, and financial constraints. "I'll figure it out," Marley said quietly. 2 weeks later, Marley stood in what had once been her living room, surrounded by boxes. The house felt different now, less like a home and more like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Photos of her and Cole still hung on the walls. His military awards sat on the mantel. Books they'd read together lined the shelves. She'd expected to feel sad, perhaps nostalgic. Instead, she felt something closer to shame as she methodically packed away 6 years of marriage. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chase. "Running late. Meeting going longer than expected. Can you grab an Uber back?" Another small retreat. Another indication that his commitment was contingent on convenience. Marley set down the box she'd been packing and sank onto the couch, the same couch where she and Cole had spent countless evenings, his arm draped casually around her shoulders as they watched movies or discussed their days. The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Assuming it was the moving company coming to provide an estimate, Marley opened the door without checking that a woman in a crisp business suit stood on the porch, a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. Marley Davidson? Yes. April Delgado, attorney at law. I represent Staff Sergeant Cole Mercer. She extended a business card. May I come in? Marley hesitated, then stepped aside. I thought all communication was supposed to go through our lawyers. Typically, yes. However, I have a settlement proposal that Mr. Mercer asked me to deliver personally. Delgado glanced around the half-packed living room. I see the eviction is proceeding. Did Cole send you to gloat? Marley asked, crossing her arms defensively. Staff Sergeant Mercer doesn't strike me as the gloating type, Delgado replied evenly. He's authorized me to present a final settlement offer. She removed a document from her portfolio. The terms are straightforward. Marley accepted the document, scanning its contents with growing disbelief. He's offering to release the injunction on $20,000, less than half of what I transferred. The remaining funds would be considered his separate property, given the source of those deposits. And in exchange, I waive all claims to the house, his military pension, and any future support. Marley looked up. He's already secured all of that through the court. Delgado nodded, which is why this is a generous offer. My client is willing to release substantial funds that the court would likely award him, given the circumstances. Out of the goodness of his heart, Marley couldn't keep the sarcasm from her voice. Out of a desire to conclude this matter efficiently, Delgado checked her watch. The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, we proceed to final judgment, where you're likely to receive considerably less. After the attorney left, Marley called Walsh. The attorney confirmed what she already suspected. Cole's offer, while not generous, was better than what she'd likely receive if the case proceeded to final judgment. He's offering you a dignified exit, Walsh explained. I recommend you take it. Later that evening, when Marley returned to Chase's condo, she found him in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine. How'd the packing go? He asked casually. Cole sent his attorney with a settlement offer. Marley placed the document on the counter. If I sign, I get $20,000 and walk away from everything else. Chase scanned the document, his expression unreadable. Sounds like he's trying to buy you off cheap. Walsh says it's better than I'll get if we keep fighting. Chase took a long sip of wine before responding. Maybe it's time to cut our losses. Marley stared at him. Our losses? You know what I mean. This divorce is draining you emotionally and financially. Maybe a clean break is best for everyone. A clean break, Marley repeated softly. Is that what you want too, Chase? A clean break? Chase wouldn't meet her eyes. I care about you, Marley. But this situation has become more complicated than either of us anticipated. Maybe we should take a step back. Reassess. The words hung in the air between them, their meaning unmistakable. Chase had been eager to pursue their relationship when it seemed simple, when he thought Marley would bring her half of the marital assets to their new life together. Now that Cole had outmaneuvered them, Chase was recalculating his investment. You're breaking up with me, Marley stated flatly. I'm suggesting we slow down. Chase amended, still not meeting her gaze. Give ourselves space to figure things out without the pressure of the divorce hanging over us. Marley nodded slowly, a strange calm settling over her. In less than a month, she had lost her marriage, her home, her financial security, and now the relationship she'd risked everything for. And through it all, Cole hadn't spoken a single word to her directly. Just that one email response. Understood. As the reality of her situation sank in, Marley reached for the settlement papers. With steady hands, she signed her name, accepting Cole's terms and the new reality he had created for her. 3 months after signing the settlement, Marley sat in her small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Boise, scrolling through job listings on her laptop. The $20,000 from the settlement was dwindling fast, and her marketing position at the sports equipment company had evaporated shortly after her divorce became public knowledge. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kinley. Have you seen this? It's everywhere. A link followed. Marley clicked it with a sense of foreboding. The website that loaded featured a podcast called Forward Observer, hosted by Kenny Harmon. The episode title made her stomach lurch. When Dependa's Attack, A Ranger's Revenge. With trembling fingers, Marley pressed play. Kenny's voice filled her apartment. Today we're discussing a situation that's all too common in military marriages. I'm not using real names here, but this story comes from a reliable source, a fellow ranger I served with in Afghanistan. Marley listened in growing horror as Kenny recounted her divorce from Cole in excruciating detail, how she'd emptied their accounts while he was deployed, moved in with their neighbor, and expected to claim half his assets despite her infidelity. But here's where it gets good, Kenny continued, his voice animated. Instead of falling apart like she expected, this ranger goes full tactical. Files for divorce in a different state, proves the adultery, secures his assets, and leave her with nothing but regrets and a U-Haul rental. The comment section below the podcast was filled with hundreds of responses, most celebrating Cole's methodical dismantling of the divorce. Finally, a military guy who doesn't get taken to the cleaners. This is why you always have a battle plan for everything, including divorce. That ranger is my hero. Cold, calculated justice. More texts flooded in from friends and acquaintances, all asking if the story was about her. Even without names, the details were specific enough that anyone who knew them could recognize the situation. Marley closed her laptop, her hands shaking. She'd expected anger from Cole, perhaps even legal maneuvering. She hadn't expected this public humiliation, this systematic destruction of her reputation. Her phone rang. The screen displayed her former employer's name. "Marley, we need to talk," said Martin Richards, the company's HR director. "We've received several concerning communications regarding your recent personal situation." "The podcast," Marley said flatly. "Among other things, yes. While we normally wouldn't involve ourselves in employees' personal matters, the volume of negative attention this has brought to the company is problematic." "Martin, I've already been let go. What more do you want?" There was an uncomfortable pause. "We're adjusting your separation agreement. The severance package we initially offered is being rescinded." "You can't do that." "I'm afraid we can. The morality clause in your contract is quite clear. The public nature of this situation and the impact on our brand gives us this option." After the call ended, Marley sat in stunned silence. The podcast had been online for less than 24 hours, and already her professional life was crumbling further. A knock at her door roused her from her daze. Opening it, she found Chase Ellison standing in the hallway, his expression thunderous. "Did you know about this?" he demanded, pushing past her into the apartment. "The podcast? I just found out myself. Not just the podcast. The IRS audit." Chase paced the small living room. "They're going through 3 years of my financial records." 3 years, Marley. What does that have to do with me? Someone tipped them off about cash transactions I've been running through my development company. Someone with detailed knowledge of my business practices. Chase stopped pacing to glare at her. "Someone like Cole." Marley sank onto the couch. "Cole doesn't know anything about your business, doesn't he? You don't find it coincidental that this audit comes right after our relationship becomes public knowledge? Right after that damn podcast goes viral." The pieces clicked into place. Cole hadn't just secured his assets and moved on. He had systematically dismantled everything Marley had tried to build: her marriage, her financial security, her professional reputation, and now her relationship with Chase. All without a single direct confrontation. All without raising his voice or making threats. Just the cold, methodical execution of a strategy she'd never seen coming. "Cole wouldn't," she began. "Wouldn't what? Take revenge? Punish the people who hurt him?" Chase laughed bitterly. "Wake up, Marley. That's exactly what he's doing. And he's doing it the same way he does everything else, with precision and detachment." As Chase stormed out, Marley was left alone with the growing realization of just how completely Cole had outplayed her. She'd assumed his silence meant acceptance, perhaps even indifference. Now she understood it had been the quiet focus of a predator stalking its prey. The podcast was just the beginning. Within days, Marley discovered that Cole's revenge extended far beyond Kenny's broadcast. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages from military spouses and service members, condemning her actions. Job applications received no responses. Former friends stopped returning her calls. As weeks passed, the $20,000 from the settlement dwindled to near nothing. Chase, facing mounting legal issues with the IRS, had cut off all contact. Her parents, while still speaking to her, made their disappointment painfully clear one evening, as Marley sat in her apartment contemplating how quickly her life had unraveled. Her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Marley Davidson?" a woman's voice asked when she answered. "Yes." "Who's this?" "Lieutenant Alejandra Vega, United States Army. I served with Cole in Afghanistan." Marley's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important. What's important is that you understand something. Cole didn't ask Kenny to make that podcast. He didn't orchestrate the social media campaign against you. That was all Kenny's doing. You expect me to believe Cole had nothing to do with it. Cole doesn't operate that way. He handles his business directly and moves on. The public spectacle? That's not his style." Vega paused. "Look, I'm not calling to defend you or what you did, but you should know the aftermath wasn't Cole's doing. That was just karma catching up." After Vega hung up, Marley stared at the phone. Whether Cole had orchestrated the public humiliation or not seemed almost irrelevant now. The damage was done. Her life had been systematically dismantled, piece by piece, until nothing remained of the future she'd envisioned. And through it all, Cole had maintained his silence. No accusations, no recriminations, just that single word in response to her email. Understood. 6 months after finalizing the divorce, Cole Mercer stood on the porch of his grandfather's cabin in western Montana, watching the sun rise over the pine forest. The property sat nestled in a small valley, 5 acres of wilderness backing up to national forest land. The cabin itself was rudimentary 2 rooms with a stone fireplace and no running water, but Cole had spent the past 3 months renovating it, adding solar panels, a well system, and expanded living space. The physical labor had been therapeutic. Each nail driven, each board cut and placed, had helped rebuild not just the cabin, but his sense of purpose. Here, surrounded by mountains and silence, Cole found room to breathe again. His phone buzzed in his pocket, one of the few concessions to modern technology he'd allowed himself in this retreat. The screen displayed Kenny's name. "Harmon," Cole answered, his voice gruff from disuse. "Hey, stranger. How's Mountain Man life treating you?" Cole surveyed the clearing around the cabin, satisfaction warming his chest at the sight of the new roof, the reinforced walls, the woodpile stacked neatly against the side of the structure. "It has its advantages. Still punching people for money?" Kenny asked, his tone deliberately casual. Cole's lips quirked in a slight smile. Since arriving in Montana, he found an outlet for his physical training at an underground fight club run by a former Force Recon Marine named Deacon Rowe. The fights weren't strictly legal, but they were well organized and provided both income and the physical challenge Cole craved. Occasionally, well, I might have mentioned you to some people in my podcast. Got a lot of listeners after that episode about, your situation. Cole frowned. "I told you to leave that alone, Kenny. And I ignored you because what she did was cold. Anyway, the point is Deacon called me. Says you're making quite a name for yourself in those fights. Says you've taken down guys twice your size without breaking a sweat. What's your point?" "My point is life goes on, brother. You've built yourself a nice little hideaway. You're staying in fighting shape, but sooner or later, you need to rejoin the world." Cole gazed out at the forest, the morning mist still clinging to the pine needles. "I'm not hiding." "No. Then why haven't you returned any of Vega's calls?" "She says she's tried reaching you 6 times this month alone." Cole sighed. Lieutenant Vega had been promoted to captain after their last deployment. She'd called several times, initially to check on him, later with what sounded like a proposition of some kind. "I'll call her," Cole conceded. "Good. And Cole, for what it's worth, I think you handled everything right. Clean, controlled, no loose ends." After ending the call, Cole sat on the porch steps, turning Kenny's words over in his mind. Had he handled everything right? The legal strategy had worked perfectly. The financial protections had saved him from ruin. The divorce had concluded on his terms. Yet something still felt unresolved. Not because he wanted Marley back, that chapter was permanently closed. Not because he regretted his actions, each step had been necessary and measured. Perhaps it was simply that he'd never allowed himself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. He'd channeled everything into strategy and execution, never pausing to acknowledge the pain beneath the calculated response. That evening, Cole drove his truck down the rutted forest road to Deacon Rowe's property, an old hunting lodge converted into what Deacon called a training facility, but was essentially a fight club for former military personnel and local tough guys looking to test themselves. The main room of the lodge had been cleared of furniture, its wooden floor covered with wrestling mats. A crude ring of rope marked the fighting area. Around it, 24 men and a handful of women gathered, drinking beer and placing bets on the night's matchups. Deacon nodded to Cole as he entered. At 52, the former Marine still maintained the physique of a man half his age, his sleeves of tattoos stretching over corded muscles as he organized fight cards on a clipboard. "Mercer," he greeted, "got someone special for you tonight." Ex-UFC fighter who washed out after testing positive for steroids. Been talking big about taking down military guys. Cole nodded, beginning his warm-up routine in the corner. He discovered these fights shortly after arriving in Montana, when a bar argument had escalated and Cole had put down a local troublemaker with efficient brutality. Deacon, witnessing the incident, had invited him to put those skills to profitable use. The money wasn't life-changing, but it supplemented Cole's military pension and provided an outlet for the physical intensity he'd grown accustomed to during deployments. More importantly, in the ring, the world narrowed to its simplest form: action and reaction, strategy and execution, pain absorbed and pain delivered. Cole was taping his hands when a familiar voice cut through the pre-fight chatter. "Still preparing the same way, I see." He looked up to find Captain Alejandro Vega standing before him, dressed in civilian clothes, but with the unmistakable posture of an officer. "Vega," Cole acknowledged, continuing to wrap his hands. "Long way from base. Apparently, I need to drive to the middle of nowhere, Montana, to get you to talk to me." She settled onto the bench beside him. "You've been avoiding my calls." "Been busy." Vega glanced around the room, taking in a makeshift fight ring and the rough crowd. "Yes, I can see that. Building a cabin and beating people up for cash. Very productive." Cole finished taping his left hand and started on the right. "What do you want, Vega?" "I have a proposition for you. Private security contract, high pay, short duration. A former ranger like you would be perfect for it." "Not interested." Vega leaned closer. "Cole, I know what happened with Marley was significant, but you can't hide out here forever." "I'm not hiding," Cole repeated, the same words he'd said to Kenny. "I'm rebuilding, then rebuild with purpose. This team needs someone with your skills. 3-month contract, specialized protection detail for a diplomatic mission in Eastern Europe. The pay is excellent, and it would get you back into the world." Before Cole could respond, Deacon approached. "You're up in 10, Mercer. This guy's good fast hands, solid ground game." Cole nodded, standing to continue his warm-up. Vega remained seated, watching as he moved through a series of stretches and shadowboxing sequences. "I'll be here when you're done," she said. "Watch your left side. You still drop your guard after throwing combinations." The fight lasted longer than most of Cole's previous matches. The ex-UFC fighter had legitimate skills and a significant weight advantage. For the first time in months, Cole found himself truly tested, forced to adapt his strategy as the fight progressed. In the end, it was the difference between fighting for sport and fighting for necessity. Where his opponent sought victory, Cole moved with the detached efficiency of someone who had fought when survival was at stake. A calculated sequence of strikes, a perfectly timed takedown, and a ruthlessly applied chokehold ended the match in the third round, as the small crowd cheered and money changed hands. Cole unwrapped his tape, his body humming with the familiar post-combat sensation, part pain, part relief, part chemical clarity. Vega approached again, handing him a bottle of water. "You're still good." Cole accepted the water. "Never stopped training. The offer stands. 3 months, specialized protection detail. Working with professionals, not bar fighters." She placed a business card on the bench beside him. "Call the number when you're ready." As she turned to leave, Cole spoke. "Why are you doing this, Vega?" She paused. "Because what happened to you was wrong, and I watched it hollow you out. Because you're too good at what you do to waste it fighting in backwoods Montana. And because maybe, just maybe, you need someone to throw you a line before you sink too deep into this self-imposed exile." After Vega left, Cole showered in the lodge's rudimentary facilities, collected his winnings from Deacon, and drove back to his cabin. The night was clear, stars visible through gaps in the pine canopy overhead. As he parked beside the cabin, Cole noticed a package leaning against his front door. Inside, he found a letter from his sister Emma, along with a framed photo of them from his last visit to Boston. The letter was chatty, full of updates about her nursing job and her new boyfriend. The final paragraph, however, hit with unexpected force. "Cole, I know you think you're handling everything well, and maybe you are. But isolation isn't the answer. What Marley did was cruel and calculated, but don't let it turn you into someone who can't trust again. You've always been the strong one in our family, the one who protected me after Mom died, the one who made sure I got through college even when you were deployed. Now, it's my turn to look out for you, even from across the country. Whatever you're building out there in Montana, make sure it's a beginning, not an end." Cole sat on his porch steps late into the night, Emma's letter in one hand, Vega's business card in the other. The forest around him was alive with night, sounds the distant hooting of an owl, the rustle of pine needles in the gentle breeze, the occasional snap of branches as nocturnal creatures moved through the underbrush. He had come to Montana seeking solitude, a place to rebuild without distractions or complications. The cabin renovation had given him purpose. The fights had provided an outlet for the physical intensity he craved. But after 6 months, he was beginning to recognize the limits of this self-imposed exile. Not because he missed his old life, that version of Cole Mercer no longer existed. Not because he craved human connection, he had always been comfortable with solitude. But because stagnation was its own form of defeat, and Cole had never accepted defeat in any form. With that realization came decision. In the morning, he would call Vega, accept the contract, not as a return to his former life, but as a step toward whatever came next. As dawn broke over the mountains, Cole placed a call. Vega answered on the second ring. "I knew you'd call." 3 months, Cole said. "No extensions, no complications." "Understood," Vega replied, the echo of Cole's own response to Marley not lost on him. "Flight leaves from Bozeman in 3 days. I'll email the details." After ending the call, Cole surveyed the cabin and the surrounding forest. This place had served its purpose as shelter while he processed the betrayal, a project to focus his energy, a retreat to rebuild his strength. It would be here when he returned, but he would no longer hide within its walls. That it was time to emerge back in the world, not as the man Marley had left, but as someone stronger, wiser, and ultimately unbroken. 1 month before departing for the Eastern European security contract, Cole received an unexpected delivery at his cabin. The FedEx driver seemed confused by the remote location, but eventually found his way up the winding forest road. The package contained a letter. The handwriting on the envelope was immediately recognizable, Marley's flowing script, once so familiar to him from the notes she'd left around their house or tucked into his deployment bags. Cole stared at the unopened letter, turning it over in his hands. The return address was unfamiliar, not Chase's condo, not their former home in Boise. Somewhere in Oregon. For a long moment, he considered simply reading it. Perhaps she wanted to explain. Perhaps she sought forgiveness. Perhaps, now that the dust had settled, she wanted to offer some closure for them both. Cole walked to the fire pit outside the cabin, where embers still glowed from his morning coffee preparation. Without opening the envelope, he dropped the letter onto the coals, watching as the edges blackened and curled, the paper consumed by flames until nothing remained but ash. Whatever Marley had to say, explanations, apologies, accusations, none of it mattered now. The time for words had passed. The marriage was over. The divorce was final. The legal battles were settled. There was nothing left to be gained from reopening wounds that had finally begun to heal. As the last fragments of the letter disintegrated into ash, Cole felt no satisfaction, no sense of petty revenge. Just the quiet certainty that he was moving forward, unburdened by the weight of what might have been. The 3 days before his departure passed quickly. Cole completed final reinforcements to the cabin, prepared it for his absence, and settled his affairs in the small nearby town. The locals had gradually accepted his presence, respecting his privacy while acknowledging him as part of the community in their reserved mountain way. On his last night in Montana, Cole sat on the porch as the sun set behind the western ridge. The cabin stood solid and secure, a testament to what he could build with his own hands. The forest stretched before him, wild and uncompromising, yet strangely comforting in its indifference. In the morning, he would drive to Bozeman, board a plane, and rejoin a world of complexity and connection. The security contract Vega had arranged would demand his skills, his focus, his ability to assess threats and neutralize them before they materialized. It would be familiar territory in many ways, the hyper-awareness, the tactical thinking, the brotherhood of professionals who understood the gravity of their responsibilities. But Cole would approach it differently now. The betrayal had changed him, not by breaking him, but by burning away illusions. He had survived Marley's deception just as he had survived firefights and ambushes, by remaining clear-headed, by adapting to changing circumstances, by refusing to surrender to emotion when strategy was required. As darkness settled over the mountains, Cole spoke aloud for the first time that day, his words carried away by the evening breeze, heard by no one but himself. Some people wait for karma. I prefer to be it. The statement wasn't born of bitterness or a desire for revenge. It was simply an acknowledgement of a truth he had always known but now fully embraced. In a world of chaos and uncertainty, control began with oneself. Actions had consequences. Choices created futures. And sometimes, justice came not from external forces, but from one's own unwavering resolve. In the morning, Cole locked the cabin door, loaded his gear into his truck, and drove down the mountain toward whatever came next. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. What lay behind him was understood. What lay ahead remained to be shaped by his own hands.